Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I will be moderating today's discussion, Stepping Stones Triple P as explained by practitioners. This webcast is part of the Government of Alberta's Community and Social Services Learning Series. For more information about the webcast series, check your emails for our regular updates or go to csslearningseries.ca. You can also follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @AlbertaCSS. We have an exciting discussion lined up today where we will be exploring what Stepping Stones Triple P is and how it benefits parents who have children with disabilities. Our panel will also discuss delivering the Triple P program to families, explaining strategies and tools used in the program, and share some success stories. Let's start off today's session with some introductions. Jess Stoy is a Triple P practitioner and a family coordinator at McMahon Services for Calgary and area. Tricia Nelson is a Triple P practitioner and a family support practitioner at Accredited Supports to the community. John Rivero is a Triple P practitioner and the founder and CEO at Key Creative Inc. And JD Hagan is a family support for children with disabilities caseworker. As always, you will be able to ask your questions to our panelists via our live chat, which is just below your video window. We will address as many of these questions as we can during the question and answer period at the end of this panel. Nicole is our online moderator. She will be the one monitoring this chat and helping you with any technical questions you may have. We encourage you to scroll down and say hi to Nicole now. Today's session is also being recorded and the video will be posted on the csslearningseries.ca webpage after this live recording. So first of all, I'd like to welcome you all here today. Thank you for taking the time to come and visit us and talk about this important issue. I'd like to start with each of you introducing yourself. And Jess, can you tell me a little bit about what you do? Sorry, Jess. Trish is here. Sorry, Jess. My apologies.
It's okay. So I'm a family coordinator with the Milestones program at McMahon, Calgary and area. And this program offers behavioral and developmental support to families who have a child with a disability. I meet parents in their homes as well as out in their community to teach skills and strategies that are relevant to the goals that they have set themselves. And I'm also a Triple P practitioner, so I'm able to provide a variety of levels of support with the Triple P model too.
Right. Now Trish, it's your turn. What do you do?
So I have the privilege of working with the Accredited Supports for the community in Strathmore. We work with a wonderful group of people there. We also provide services, a wide variety of services to families, including a group respite program. My focus, I get to sometimes work in group respite, but my main focus is Stepping Stones Triple P. I also teach a variety of levels of that, the Stepping Stones group and standard Triple P, primary care teen, all Stepping Stones, and the enhanced Triple P to families in rural areas, mostly east of Calgary. So east and south of Calgary in the communities. I also work with them in their homes, mostly is in their homes, but we do try and provide the group Triple P when we have enough families that are ready to do it. So yeah, it's really, really very rewarding. I get to travel a lot and meet a lot of different families.
John, can you tell us a little bit about Key Creative?
Sure. So Key Creative provides success coaching for special needs. We work with children, families, and schools living with special needs and trauma all over Alberta, as well as all over the world. We believe that every child and family has strengths and talents, and we believe in celebrating them to help overcome challenges and developmental abilities and challenges. So. We also are an international program, so we do a lot of work in third world countries.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So 10 years ago, I made a promise to my father, who was passing away, to visit the Philippines. And I made a promise to go and work with children less fortunate than us. And so we've started a program called the Balikbayan Project, where we use artistic elements to help kids living with trauma on the streets heal from trauma, and we also train various NGOs who are working with disaster relief or children and families who are living with sexual, physical abuse. And we go back every year, so we're always looking for volunteers if anyone wants to join us.
Yeah, I need to talk to you.
Yeah.
All right, JD, to you. Tell us a little bit about what you do as an Fsc G Caseworker.
Yes, I am a caseworker with the Family Supports for Children with Disabilities program. For people who are not familiar with that program, it's a provincial program that's offering services and supports to families who have a child or children with disabilities. It's a voluntary program and it's a legislated act. One of the purposes of the program in offering these services that are proactive and family-based is to strengthen families' ability to promote their child's healthy growth and development. And as a FSCD caseworker, essentially you're a connection with the program for that family and the resources as well. You carry a caseload, you visit your families annually on the caseload or more frequently depending on circumstances. You assess the needs of the family and you create agreements, among other things.
So you're all doing a lot of very interesting, difficult work. I want to start with Trish now. Can you tell us what exactly is Triple P?
I'll try and keep it in a nutshell because there's a lot to Triple P. Just talking about. So basically, Triple P stands for a Positive Parenting Program. It was developed by Dr. Matt Sanders and his colleagues at the University of Queensland in Australia. It is a research and evidence-based program. It's been going for a little over 30 years. It's worldwide, and it's amazing. And my background as an educator really drew me to it because of that research and evidence-based. And when I was an early intervention therapist, it was teaching parents some of the skills I was using as an early intervention therapist. And giving them those skills so that if they had help in the home, when that help went home, the parents had the skills to carry on the teaching that they wanted and they weren't kind of left. And it's amazing.
How does the parent coaching model work?
So you're not really teaching the parent how to parent, you're teaching them strategies. What Triple P has done is they've created a toolbox. And what I get to do is I get to help the parents figure out what their strengths are, what their areas to work on, and what the specific goals are that they want their children to learn, right? So it's not just managing behavior, it's what do they want their children to learn about how to manage their behavior. And so you're teaching them strategies, and the parents are active participants in choosing the strategies that they feel will work with them, and then you're tailoring those strategies to fit the family. So if that child likes video games, then you're setting up a, a reward program that will involve the thing that that child really wants to do, and hopefully wants to do with you. And that tailoring can help the parents make that program work specifically for them. And you're helping them build their confidence, and you're also helping them learn to take care of themselves as a parent. Because like in an airplane, when the oxygen mask drops down, as a parent, you want to put that oxygen mask on you, and then you can take care of the child, because you can't do anything if you're passed out in the aisle. There's nothing, right? So you want them to learn to take care of themselves, and by learning to take care of themselves and learning these strategies, it helps them be calmer, it helps them feel more confident and more confident, and then they are
Very
able
empowering.
to yes, absolutely, that's exactly the word. It's very empowering, and it helps the whole family be happier.
Jess, can you tell us a little bit about the Stepping Stones variation of Triple P? What's involved there?
So Stepping Stones was developed for parents of children 2 to 12 years old with a developmental disability, also sensory and physical disabilities. And basically a family is provided with a workbook, and they meet regularly with a practitioner to review the sessions within that workbook. And the information includes things like why behaviors are occurring, how to teach skill development, and also managing misbehavior strategies. And so it's the practitioner's job to observe as well as support the implementation of whatever strategies the parent has chosen from that workbook, and then promote self-reflection, because self-reflection is a large part of the program. If a parent is able to problem solve through a behavioral challenge and reflect on what they've done really well and what they could change for next time, then they're able to, once the program's over, tackle any other behavioral challenge that comes up. So they're able to generalize a lot of skill, and so that can be really empowering.
The applications can be used in a number of different settings.
Yeah.
John, tell us about the delivery methods. How do you deliver this program?
Yes, well, traditionally it can be done one-on-one with parents. However, as we know, in real life situations, sometimes scheduling is really tough. So you could also do it over the phone. I've done it with families that live in rural communities where blizzards are an actual reality. You can't necessarily drive on that range road or that township road. So we've done video conference as well as group. And I think one of my favorite ways to deliver it is group. In the Philippines, actually, we delivered group stepping stones to a village that doesn't have very much technology. And this is the cool part about Triple P. It's such a universal program. Regardless of language barrier, we all are humans with similar needs. And so that was a really cool experience to be able to do that in a adapted 4-hour session, cramming everything kind of like a crash course, and have it be translated into Tagalog, which is cool. Oh, and there's also online. You can do it online. Yeah.
Really, so there's no excuse.
There's always a way, right?
There's always a way.
Yeah.
JD, how do families find out about this? How do they get enrolled?
There's a few ways. If they are involved with FSCD, they can have a talk with their FSCD caseworker, and possible referral could be made that way. Anybody can access Triple P by contacting Parent Link Centers, which are located all across Alberta. They can look up which location is close by, give them a call and see what they offer. And the website that John mentioned, there is online access as well by going to the Triple P website, which is www.triple-p-parenting.ca.
All right, and you could also Google Triple P parenting, I would imagine.
I would imagine,
and
yeah.
it would come up as well,
Yeah.
so that would be good. Okay, I want to go a little deeper. I want to talk about, we're going to put up a pyramid on the screen so our viewers, wherever they're at right now, can see the pyramid and the Triple P strategies. And I'd like to explore a few of these strategies. I want to, let's begin with JD and talk about which one is one that stands out to you, one of your favorites.
Yeah, I found the Triple P strategies to be overall very user-friendly for families. They were able to implement them into their daily routines fairly easily for the most part. And the one I liked, or one of the ones I liked a lot, was called Descriptive Praise, which is essentially about looking for, seeking out, noticing anything your child is doing well or right, and commenting on that, and doing it frequently throughout the day so that it becomes the focus of your parenting, more so than trying to focus on what needs to be fixed or what the child is maybe not doing right. And it does change the dynamics over time in that the child is more likely to do that behavior, the good behavior, more frequently, just because you're commenting on it and focusing on it.
How difficult is it to make that shift?
You know, it's interesting because I did it myself when I first read about it. They gave some statistic about you should comment positively 6 times more often than negatively. Is that correct? 6 times? And I went home and did my tallies for myself, and it was a big shift for me. You know, I think you tend to look at what's not going right because you want to fix it for them, but this makes you do it a little differently. So it takes a while, but it's definitely doable.
John, I must say, nice choice in hat.
Yeah.
Hey, that works.
Thank you.
That works.
Can I-
Oh, yes, of course.
If that's all right. What I find with the positive descriptive praise, for myself as well as for parents, it can turn around a bad morning. if you're having a really stressed out morning and things are just not going well, finding just the littlest thing to give that positive descriptive praise for, it helps you, it changes it shifts your focus, like you said. It shifts your focus, and then it can shift your child's focus, and it can start to turn around. So it's almost like when you least feel like giving positive descriptive praise is when you actually need it most. And it's
point.
a simple little tool that you can use.
Thanks for filling my bucket, by the way.
Yes.
Can I get you a coffee
I'm
or
always
something?
here to fill your bucket, that's for sure, every one of you. John, I want to find out from you, what stands out in the pyramid for you?
Something that I think I find is sometimes underrated by I wouldn't just say families we work with, I think the world, is spending quality time. Now, I'm going to be a parent pretty soon, so in about 3 or 4 weeks, I'll be a first-time dad. Wow. So now I actually have to practice what I preach. We'll see how that goes. Anyways, I'm going to need your help, right? But like, really, is quality, in my opinion, is not necessarily the same as quality for a child. And spending quality time doesn't necessarily have to mean something that the dad or the mom or a caregiver is interested in, but really, what is the child interested in? And it doesn't have to be long either. So a strategy I like that goes along with that is frequent short bursts of attention. Rather than, oh my God, I don't have an hour to spend with my child, I can just spend quality 30 seconds and getting their attention in 3 ways: visually, verbally, and physically. Yeah, it can go a long way.
Yeah, great suggestion.
Keeping it positive for 30 seconds, much easier than an hour too, right?
Absolutely.
So it's just very good strategy.
Yeah, and with our hectic lifestyles, which we all seem to have, right?
Yes.
It's going to take some real intention to spend that quality time, isn't it? But it'll be a big reward in the end.
Yes.
All right, Jess, how about you? What do you notice on that pyramid that really stands out?
I really like setting clear ground rules, and these are just a really clear way to set the expectation for the home or really any environment that a family goes in. So in the car, at the mall, or for bedtime. It can be just anything. And the rules are meant to be things that we want to state things that a child should be doing rather than what they should not be doing. So, for example,
similar to the positive, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So if we have a child who's really aggressive and kicking a lot, instead of saying the rule is no kicking, we're going to say the rule should be feet to yourself or feet on the ground. If you have a child that's yelling, then you would say, instead of no yelling, we want to have quiet voice or inside voice. These can be really an added bonus to make a visual of these rules. And then if you're noticing that something's happening in a particular environment and you have the visual of that rule, it's just an added reminder. And you want to make sure you're not doing too many at one time. So if you can keep it to under 4 rules, then once those are all good, you can move on to the next.
Yeah, breaking it in manageable chunks, right?
Yeah.
Why is it so important to tell them what to do as opposed to not what to do?
Because surprisingly, some kids don't know what they should be doing. So it's really important to not just say the no's, because there could be children who just don't understand. Well, if I can't be kicking, what should I be doing instead? And so there's a learning opportunity there, for sure.
Tricia, how about you? What are you seeing on that pyramid that you think, yeah, that's a great idea? And you've seen
I love them all. I do. But what actually really relates to what Jess said, and it's kind of neat how this worked out, is that the rules can really relate to one called calm, clear instructions, right? Which really can really well relate back to your rules, is saying, getting close, like what you said, that visual. So rather than, and this happens in my house still working on this. So it's, you just, if it doesn't go well one day, you pick up the next day and you say, okay, I'm going to try this again. So rather than calling from the kitchen to my daughter to say, you need to shut off the TV because she's hyper-focused, she's in the show, right? Rather going over, getting close to her, getting her attention, using pause, because it is the best invention ever in the Northern Hemisphere. That person should get a prize. And getting down to her level and saying, Rowan, it's time to shut off the TV now. You need to bring your plate into the kitchen. She had her snack in front of the TV. So that whole calm, clear, and it's much easier for her to see me and listen to me and understand the instruction. And that way I don't escalate to where I'm yelling at her and trying to get her attention by yelling at her. Because now I'm escalated and I'm upset. And then she's upset because I yelled at her. And she doesn't know why, because she was so focused on the show. But the other part of that is, of the rules and those calm, clear instructions, is the top of that pyramid that looks at the actual consequences for not following those instructions. And there's two ways you can choose to go. A parent might use primarily one, or the situation might call for using one rather than the other. But the first is a logical consequence. So if children are fighting on the couch, siblings fighting on the couch, and the rule is keep your hands and feet to yourself, I can now go back to that rule, come over, use my calm, clear instruction. You guys need to keep your hands and feet to yourselves. I give them that reminder. I give them an opportunity to use the rule. Now I've got an opportunity to give praise right away. Thank you for keeping your hands and feet to yourself. It's nice and descriptive. If they don't, then I now have an opportunity to say, okay, I'm putting the TV on pause for 5 minutes. You've lost your TV. There's no, now they know why, and they know they'll get it back after 5 minutes. Once I've done it a few times, then before I give the remote back, I say, you guys need to keep your hands and feet to yourselves. I'm turning on the TV again. And within a few seconds, I can tell them to give them praise. Thank you. Otherwise, or else I can use quiet time. I can actually bring them out of the situation, give them time to self-regulate for a couple of minutes, and then return them to the situation, tell them the rule. They're very, very similar.
John, why is it so important to explain clearly what they need to do and why it's important?
I think it's because our thoughts, we have, I don't know, I can't even say the exact number, thousands if not millions of thoughts a day, and that take our attention, especially in today's digital age. And I think parenting is different now than it ever has been, and will continue to get different. But I think what it's, I guess, top of mind. So if you're like what everyone's saying here, whatever is said clearly, more clearly, is more likely to be understood by the child. And I think to go along with that is one of the cool things about Triple P is waiting. So waiting after something is said so that the child can process, like you said about like pause, the pause button. I just remember my mom with Nintendo. Like she would threaten to throw the Nintendo away and I knew that's not really a logical consequence she would follow through on. But she knew how to pause and repeat and say what I needed to do, which was brush my teeth. Now I find myself thinking, okay, I need to also, as a practitioner, teach that to parents, remind them, don't just repeat the same thing over and over again, wait for it, but say it even simpler, in the simplest way. Yeah. I think that's why it's really important.
Yeah, and like you said, you can break things down into chunks. Clean your room, that's huge for some kids. Whereas a calm, clear instruction that says, okay, let's look at your room, clean up the Lego first, put it in the bin. Yeah. Right? And you can break things down because especially children with special needs, but any child really can get very overwhelmed. I get overwhelmed, right? So breaking things down into chunks, it's a valuable skill, and by getting their attention and letting them process it and follow through it.
JD, do you see something else on the pyramid that stands out to you that you like?
The other one I was thinking of is giving attention, and again, it's just a frequent positive reinforcement during the day. Maybe a high five or a smile or some connection with that child that's ongoing and consistent. In that way, you often are, we were talking about filling up their tank, where you're filling up their tank so that maybe you're going to avoid that negative attention-seeking behavior that can happen down the road, because they don't need to do that. They don't need to go that way.
Why do you think that's so important, Jess, for kids with disabilities?
You need to be clear, you need to just give time, and the learning process can be a little bit longer. So it's just about breaking things down and trying not, as the adult, not to get frustrated in those situations.
It can be very frustrating and can escalate to screaming and yelling quite quickly, and particularly with time restraints like we seem to have, and that device captivating them and everything. So how do you do it specifically with what we're dealing with now? It just seems all that more difficult, or am I off base on that, John?
No, I think you're exactly right. Technology, I think, is changing at every second, if not millisecond. And I think that it's all about a battle for attention in our world. Like, we all carry around smartphones now. Even as parents, it's not even how do we work as parents for our children, it's how do we parent ourselves to stick to what our accountabilities are. So that's a worry and a fear for me as not only as a clinician, but as a new dad coming up, is how am I going to really give my child the best attention that I can give? And really I go back to that first strategy I shared. It's quality over quantity. And because our world, we just don't know what the world's going to be like even in 1 year, rather than even just like looking at 5 years from now. It's going to be very, very different. So, but our needs are going to stay the same. And it's really, my opinion is connection and one-on-one relationship. That's why Triple P is so great.
And how does Triple P change, or perhaps it doesn't, as the children age and develop?
You want to take that?
Anyone? Jess?
It doesn't change a whole lot. Again, it depends on what the parent, what behaviors are taking place throughout as the child develops. They go through periods of time where it feels like the things that they learned years ago are now a problem again, and so and then they could have a great day. So it's really just about being flexible and remembering the strategy. So again, that generalization. So something that worked yesterday may not work today, just like something that worked 2 years ago might not work in the future. So just being mindful of what has worked, and Triple P offers a lot of great physical materials and online materials, so a parent can always go back to those things and as a refresher, because just because we've been doing this for years and years doesn't mean we would expect a parent to learn it and just be able to remember the things that would come to our mind. So it really is that, again, that self-reflection and then going back to the materials that they have.
Well, it takes practice, doesn't it? And like you say, just assessing. We can learn so much from our failures too, right? We're so concerned about being, making a mistake or being a failure. But why is that so important, Tricia?
I think that comes from the self-evaluation that Jess, and hopefully I've got the question right, is that we really focus on 2 things you did well, 1 thing you would do differently next time. So, because parents are excellent at beating up at themselves, on themselves. We're very good at guilt. But by having that structure of self-evaluation, where you say, what are 2 things you did well first? Then the parent has to focus on, well, hey, I did this and I did this. And what's something you would do differently next time? So I raised my voice a little, so next time I'm going to stay calmer. How are you going to do that? I could take a couple deep breaths, right? So by doing that, you're really able to sort of stay on top of the strategies in that sense.
And it works really for both the parent and the child, doesn't it? And for everyone around. Because it's good role modeling, and everyone benefits from that.
Because kids can self-evaluate too. After you've gone to the store and you've done your plan, right, then you can say, hey, how do you think that went? And it brings in your positive descriptive praise. So it all kind of works together like Velcro. You can start to bring in strategies that, that are all sort of interrelated.
Is there any other strategy on the pyramid that any of you would like to bring up that you think is really important? John?
Sure, yeah. I think something really cool about Triple P is a lot of times parents say, well, I don't really have that many challenging behaviors per se. I don't know, Triple P is not for me. Well, my opinion is Triple P can be for everybody, because it also teaches not just when things are going challenging, but how to promote more positive things. And we all know that we could always use more positive things in our lives. So a strategy is teaching backwards. So as an occupational therapist, this is something I've been using daily, working with kids. And really essentially A lot of people think you have to always teach from step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 in that sequence. However, as we know, sometimes the first step is the hardest to break through. And a lot of times kids are not either motivated or it's just too hard for them. So backwards chaining, or teaching backwards, gives the family permission to actually start with the last step. So you can do hand over hand for all the first 9 steps. Let's pretend you're teaching how to tie your shoes. You're doing it with them, making the bunny loops, et cetera, and then the final step, perhaps the child is most motivated to do, they start to practice that, and you give a high five, amazing job tying your shoes. And once that child gets more motivation, they're anticipating learning the second last step, and then the third last step, until they learn the entire sequence backwards. And I think it's just great because it gets kids and parents to think outside the box. And sometimes that small strategy can help kids and families learn something that didn't have to be that stressful.
Bending the rules a little bit,
Yeah,
and seeing it from a different point of view, because we all do have different points of view and how to best tackle it. And just back to your point about a parent coming in and saying, well, we don't have any issues, just wait, right? I mean, I don't think there's going to be a parent on earth that says, I never had any issues with my children. So, you know, if the child is 5, then they've been pretty darn lucky. But look out, because here comes 6 to 10 or whatever, right? So it's probably, I would imagine, beneficial for parents to look at this and maybe not have to implement it now, but down the line. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of those key strategies you mentioned about as your child grows, and one of the triple P strategies is communicating with your child on whatever level of capability they're able to do that. But as they grow, is really spending that quality time, being in touch with what's important with them, listening to what they have to say, asking specific questions, right? Who did you play with today? What did you play on the playground today? And the video game. So even if you're not into the particular video game that your child likes, and Minecraft is just not what you want to do right now, but if you've got a few minutes and you can sit down, dinner's already, you know, in the oven and whatnot, and you can sit down for 5 minutes and they're dying to tell you about Minecraft, being focused and giving that, because part of that calm, clear attention is also listening skills, modeling those listening skills and sitting there and listening to what they want to tell you about Minecraft, because that 5 minutes is so important to them. And as they grow up, being in tune with that, that also tells you what things they're willing to work for. So all those rewards, we have a rewards chart in the book. What is your child motivated by? And that helps you set up rewards programs that are going to motivate your child to do what you want them to do and to learn what you want to teach them, right? Because now, for your teen, you're working on being polite and using appropriate language, and, you know, coming home after school and not going and hanging out with friends right away so that you're worried. And I did this with one parent, and they set it up so that her daughter, she was an accountant, and she had a whole bunch of goals. She had points for each one, and they sat down every day after school when her daughter made it home, and they added up the points. And the points were toward, she had, I think, 500, 1,000, and 1,500. And each one was worth something that her daughter had been saying she wanted to do. And one of them, I think 1,000 points, was a shopping trip. So they got to talk about the fashion, they got to go and shop together, so built up the quality time. It was something her daughter wanted to do. Clothes she wanted, they set out a budget that was worth that 500 points. And they tackled the behavior. And sometimes there are things that you might have bought your child anyway.
Yes.
Right? So it's a win-win situation, right? The shopping trip, she probably needed clothes come September anyway. You would have bought them anyway, but now she's working on her behavior. And so you're both winning, which is pretty exciting.
Strategic parenting.
Yeah, it's a lot of problem solving and tailoring.
Well, we just want to tell everybody in the audience that if you have any questions, we want you to write them into the chat window, because we're nearing our question and answer period. But before we get to that, we want to talk about some success stories. And I know all these people have some great success stories to share with us. So why don't we start with you, JD? What kind of success can you tell us about with the Triple P program?
Yeah, the story that came to my mind was I got a really lovely phone call one day from a parent on my caseload. She wanted to tell me about her drive to work that morning and how wonderful it was. And the reason that was a nice phone call is because a year earlier when I met with her, she described her drive in the morning as a nightmare. She would drive her kids to school and then go to work. But the whole thing was very, very upsetting for her because the kids were not interested in going to school, so they were delaying getting ready. And by the time they all got into the car, they were running behind schedule. And as the trip went on, the kids would inevitably start to argue and fight, and sometimes they would throw things at each other. Sometimes they would kick the back of the seat when she was driving, which got her very stressed out. She said she would raise her voice and start taking away privileges. As they're going along, they're losing one after the other. After school, they got home and they had no privileges left, so it was also an unhappy time. They got to school in the morning, they were crying. They got home after school, they're still unhappy. And it just was this horrible cycle they were in. So she took the Triple P program, started to implement very slowly some of the strategies that she felt would be helpful for her. Just little things, but she was very consistent and stuck with it. And she said when they started to drive, she would compliment each of them. She would point out one thing in detail that they had done really well that morning or the night before. Then she would continue to talk about things as they drove. She'd look out the window and talk about the scenery or a person or an animal, something enjoyable and pleasant. And that distracted them, and it was something new, so it kind of caught them off guard. And she would also put little activities in the car before they left, and it was like a surprise for them, so they looked forward to that. They liked that. And she said they had also pre-planned a consequence. So if somebody slipped up and did something wrong, they all knew what the consequence was out of the gate, and they didn't lose everything before they got to school. And she said it took a while. It definitely took a while, but the kids started to mimic her, and they would compliment her sometimes on something she did well, or they would talk about something they saw out the window. And over time, it became really enjoyable for them to go to school in the morning. They didn't dilly-dally. They wanted to get to the car to see if there was something fun to do. And when she called me, she basically said, now we enjoy our time together, and it actually spills over to the after school because they're still, not always, but they're still in a good mood a lot of the days when they get home. It makes our evenings a much more pleasant time too. She also said that it changed how she uses her services. She wasn't using as many of them, and she wasn't using maybe as intensive of services because there was less fighting, there was less stress overall, and their relationship had shifted in a very positive way.
Awesome.
How would you describe the way that mom feels now compared to a year ago?
It was a big, big difference. Just the fact that she thought to call me and say, I had a really nice drive to work this morning. It was a huge, huge thing for her and her kids too. She has 2 young boys with disabilities. I forgot to mention that part. So she was a single mom, very challenged in parenting, and yeah, it was a very nice phone call to get.
Now you talk about it taking a year. This is not something where we can say the average time takes, right?
No, it's not a magic wand fix for sure, and I think you have to be consistent and maybe tweak things to fit your family and fit your style of parenting, but I don't know that it took her a whole year. It took her months to do it, though, for sure, to switch that around. But it was a big life switch because, like I said, it started out good in the morning and it often ended up good when they went to bed.
And so what if they fall off the wagon and they resort to that old behavior?
And that happens a lot. I think you typically go right back to where you were, maybe when you're having a bad day. So then there's always tomorrow, right? You have to pull yourself back on track when you can.
Hit the reset button.
Hit the reset, the pause, yeah.
Go again.
Yeah.
And should a parent be rough on themselves, or how should they feel going into when they hit the reset?
I think parents are rough on themselves, but no, they shouldn't. I mean, the fact that you can stick with something that's a big shift in your own behavior is huge. You should be proud of that.
And there's no such thing as a perfect parent. And there's no such thing as a perfect child.
I think John's going to be the perfect parent.
Only everyone in Alberta is watching this.
No, I understand exactly what you mean. Jess, what's a good example for you that you can tell us about a success story?
My success story is about a mom who has a daughter diagnosed with ADHD and developmental coordination disorder. And when I first started meeting with them, she would tell me that she was really mad at herself because she yelled all the time. And the yelling matches at home would turn into these big escalations, and then the daughter often would get physical either with her siblings or the mom or with stuff in the house. And so one of the big battles was having to shower, and she was incapable of doing that on her own, and yet when mom tried to help her, there was a lot of fighting that went on there. And so I met with the daughter and the mom together, and we created a visual activity schedule of all the steps that were involved in the showering process, because that was sort of the everyday battle that we were going to start with. And so the visual was created and laminated and put into the shower. And the mom, it took about, I would say, 3 months from the mom to move herself out of the shower, but she was eventually able to leave the bathroom altogether, and then the daughter was capable of doing that task all on her own. And so that was one of those battles that was no more. And over time and over that particular process, the mom learned how best to teach her daughter new skills, and also when to back off, when to step in. And so there was a whole new process to the problems that were happening, and they just happened less and less. And one day, I came over and she had said that her other child said to her, "Mom, you aren't yelling at us anymore." And it took that comment for her to say, wow, I've really changed my parenting style. And she was super proud of herself, and definitely motivated her to then, tackle the next thing, because it was affecting the whole house. It was a calmer house and definitely more positive overall.
Why was it important that you talked to both the mom and daughter?
That was important because the daughter was capable of having that conversation. And so there's a lot more buy-in from a child if we can include them in that step. And so she was telling me what the steps of the showering routine were. Mom was chiming in if she got them wrong or, forgot. And so it was a process, because when I closed my file with the family, they had learned how to do that step together. They didn't need me to be there. They were able to learn, oh, okay, we just need to come together and problem solve. So for that home, it worked because the child was capable of and wanted to be a part of the conversation.
How many parents do you run into who are only blaming the child and not looking inward?
Lots.
Yeah, it's common.
Yeah, it's pretty common.
JD?
Yeah, I think I see that a lot. And it's not that they're not necessarily self-aware, but they want to feel as though they're doing their best. And I think they get to a certain level of frustration too, where they feel like they've absolutely tried everything and exhausted every avenue, and nothing ever works. So it must be the child. What else could it be, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, Tricia, do you have an example of a success story for us?
Right. So this was also a teen, but he was not willing to participate in that discussion. He's a young man with ADHD, and he had been staying up late, and his parents worked, I think his dad worked shift work. And so Dad was having to leave sometimes before he got off to school, but the son was staying up with his phone. So another one of those technological things. And it's a fabulous tool. It's learning how to use it and set those boundaries around it. And so he was missing school, sleeping in, not doing chores, and things had escalated to a point where they were having such conflict that Mom had stopped talking to him, and they had one confrontation where Mom was at her wit's end to the point where she actually called the cops to help her resolve the situation. So they were at that point, and then Mom had just stopped communicating. It was all on Dad to communicate with him because she and him couldn't even talk without getting into a fight. So Mom was in tears the first time we met. And they had actually removed the phone entirely. He had been without his phone for 3 months, which, you know, teens actually, when there's a consequence that lasts for a real long time without an end in sight of how to specifically earn it back, teens actually get really bummed out. And parents feel like they've punished the whole family, not just the teen. And so what we did was we worked on strategies. First of all, the goals, what did they want him to do? And they wanted him to get to bed on time. They wanted him to be polite and use appropriate communication. And they wanted him to do a minimum set of chores. And so by getting those specific goals set up, then we could work on using the phone, giving it back to him, and setting up rules and expectations surrounding that phone use. And he had to turn in the phone at night to his parents' room so it could be charged. And I believe it was not taking it to school with him, stayed in the room. And then when he would text with Dad, or maybe Dad let him take the phone if he had followed the rules the night before. And then he could have it for the following evening if he had followed the rules before. And it got so that he was having it every evening because he was doing what was asked of him. And they got to a point where they started having family meals together again, family movie nights on Fridays. The son asked his dad to help him fix his bike, things that they hadn't been doing in months and months. And we ended up with smiles from the parents. And their comment to me was, their son said to them going out the door one day, he's like, man, this is so easy. All I have to do is be nice to you guys and do my chores, and I get to have my phone. So yeah, very much a win-win. And there's like, yeah, that's all we really wanted. So yeah, it was quite entertaining, and we finished off the program. They were happy.
Yeah, and that's quite dramatic because when
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about a mom coming to you and she's crying and she's been forced to call the police, I mean, how often do you see that extreme?
More often than I would like, but still not very often. But when we can use these tools and bring them to a family and say, I think this will help you, and they buy in and they do it because they're doing the work. They're doing all the hard work, and they're the ones who need to buy in and stay consistent and make sure that they're consistent. Because what often happens is that when you make a big shift, sometimes a child people don't like change. Even as adults, we don't like change, right? If you say at the water cooler at work, or if you say at work, okay, you guys all have to earn your parking spots now, it's not just the senior guy, you're going to hear about it around the water cooler. So we don't like change, anyone. And so when parents do a big change, sometimes children will escalate their behavior in order to try and get you to go back, where you'll give up and you'll go back to the way things were because it was easier. And it's not because they're manipulative, it's not because they hate you or anything like that. They're communicating through their behavior, I don't like this, and I'd really like you to go back to the way that worked for me, right? The cause and effect. So it's really up to the parents to stay at that, to make that commitment, to stick with that program. And then the child goes, oh, okay, this is the normal, you're both on board with this, okay. And then the behavior comes down and things calm down. So it's really about letting parents know this could get worse before it gets better. You need to be prepared to stick with this. Because it's short-term pain for long-term gain, and we know from the research, we know from the evidence, it works. Just stick with me, I'll support you through it, but it can work for you, but you gotta make the commitment, and it's hard work for them.
John.
Yes, so many, but I'll pick a short one. One was we do a lot of work with rural families, who live in the country, and we also do a lot of work with two parents, but a lot of times it's a single parent household, if that makes sense, in the sense that one parent works a lot and to sustain the family, and the rest of the parenting usually falls under that other person who stays at home or is more home often. This one mom is an incredible human being. She had 3 boys, and still does. The middle boy is living with Down syndrome, and he had just got enrolled at their local community school into their PUF program into kindergarten. And he had a huge regression into his general behavior. So Mom was just really doing her best, and honestly, she was burning out. She was burnt out when I came to the picture. And Mom was just, she was so hard on herself. And one of the things that I think I knew, perhaps Triple P wasn't necessarily going to fix everything. But one thing that Triple P is about is taking care of yourself as a caregiver. So when she read that on the pamphlet, she just started to cry. And we had a good cry, and she realized herself, without me even saying anything, she hadn't been doing anything for herself for years, like maybe a decade. And this is an educated mom, a mom who had dreams to become an entrepreneur. And all of a sudden, she's got 3 kids, and a lot of the parenting is on her. Now, she started to ask me questions. So usually Triple P, I ask the questions, but she's asking me questions. Like, how do you have time to work out? How do you have all these families and you're still able to stay in shape and still do your singing and martial arts, all of that? And I said, you know what? I have to think of myself as needing to fill my own bucket. So we used that analogy, and I said, well, what do you want to do? And she's like, well, I want to just get through the day. I said, no, in 10 years from now, what do you want to be doing? And I just asked that question. She says, I want to be a coach. I want to be a life coach. I want to be an entrepreneur. And I said, okay, so your homework for this next week is to write down 2 or 3 actions that you could do that will help you achieve that goal and fill your bucket, but also help you feel, give yourself permission to feel proud of yourself as a parent. And she graduated from Triple P like within maybe 5 weeks. Wow. And she really started waking up at 4:30 in the morning, and we focused on quality over quantity. She started doing her scrapbooking. She created a scrapbooking book club. She became an entrepreneur. Now this is why it's a success. His behavior did not improve. It got worse. And to this day, maybe his behavior is still getting worse. But what I think is a success is she says, I can do it. And her partner, her husband, came in for the first time. She said this is the first time him and I have actually talked about how we're going to help our family get through not just Down syndrome, but how we're going to raise 3 awesome men. And to me, that was so inspiring, because to this day, she's got her own Instagram account. I follow her Instagram account, and I get daily inspiration from her. So to me, it's like Triple P isn't just about changing someone's challenging behavior. It's about that resilience and that grit that I can do this, and no matter what life or challenges my son or my daughter are going to have, we're still going to be a family, we're still going to love each other, and life will continue to thrive. And I think that's the success of that story.
And it can be difficult for parents, but particularly for women. Why is that, do you think, Jess?
Typically, we're meeting with the moms who are taking care of their kids while dad or their partner is working. So it's hard when you are doing all of the things that need to be done for that mom and the house and 1 or 2 or 3 or more children. So it's just a lot to put on one person, and sometimes that's all you got. So so our job as a practitioner is to, again, not set goals that are too out there, and something that's achievable within the time that we're with them, so that confidence can be built, and then they can move on to the next goal and the next goal down the road.
Just tell me the difference between men versus women, moms versus dads, and how they view the challenge of having a child with disabilities, and the guilt that's associated with it, and just the workload that they think is associated with it.
It actually is quite different. I wouldn't say that there's a standard mom thought or a dad thought, just based on who I've met with. So it's hard to say exactly if they would have, I think the guilt that you're talking about comes and goes, and we talk about it and we reflect on what that's about. And again, it's not bad to have that thought, but what can we think about differently, and how can we, again, if we had a bad day, make the next day better, or if we had a bad morning, how can we make the evening a better evening?
I guess what I was thinking is that it seems like it is easier for men to fill their bucket as opposed to women. And now I might be completely off, but what do you think in your experience, JD?
I think that's true. I think maybe it's culturally, I'm not sure why it is, but I think moms tend to feel guilt, and that's a common thing I see, where they carry that with them and they feel like they have to always put everyone else before themselves and their own needs. Not every mom, absolutely every parent is different, but that's something I've noticed a lot.
How do we overcome that, Tricia?
I think it's so much about perceptions and communication. So in level 5, Enhanced Triple P, we work and this is something I'm a little bit new to too, which is quite exciting, is we have the opportunity to work with parents who are having some of those challenges. And we have some great tools of working through like problem solving, right? And getting them to communicate, what's your perception of this problem? What's your perception of this problem? What are so what is the core problem, right? What's the core outcome we want to see? And then getting them both to brainstorm and think about ways that they think they could solve it. And then they rate it, and then they decide on a solution that they both want to try together. And that enhanced program has so many amazing tools. I actually got to try one, and it was successful. It worked.
So tell us about a tool then.
That's the one. It's the problem-solving tool.
Oh, okay.
And it was, Mom had been working on, they have twin boys, preschool-age boys, both diagnosed with autism. So food issues are a challenge, getting them to eat a wider variety of foods, but early intervention is so important because with children with autism, some, you call them rigidities develop, where they won't eat some food. So it's like in a typical child, we all have food rigidities, just sort of amplified by the diagnosis of autism. And so Mom was working really hard to get the boys to eat and making food on the weekends. But when Dad was coming home, it was his job to feed the boys because she wasn't home yet. And when they didn't want to eat those newer foods or more unfamiliar foods, Dad's tired, he's just come home from work, he's worked a full day, he's traveled a couple hours, and his go-to, if the boys didn't want to eat, he's worried about them getting some food into them so that they'll sleep. So his go-to was craft dinner and easy food. So Mom was getting frustrated because the boys weren't getting enough nutrition. And Dad's like, it doesn't matter if it's nutritious if they won't eat it. So we worked together on that problem-solving sheet for them both to come up with sort of a happy medium where Dad got to use a few of those easy meals during the week, got a break, and the more challenging meals with the nutrition were on the weekends, and they used some food rewards of things the boys liked. If you eat a little bit of this, you get a little bit of the Nutri-Grain bar, right? Eat a little bit more, you get a little bit more of the Nutri-Grain bars. And you start with 3 peas, you get Nutri-Grain. Now it's 6. Now it's 9 peas, right? And so they just kept upping the ante. And then they both felt supported on the weekends. And they had time. No one was rushing to get to bed so they could be up for school the next morning and get out the door. So yeah, it was quite remarkable. But them sharing those perceptions was very challenging for them and I'm there. And so they're trying not to escalate towards each other and trying to solve the thing and still be heard. So yeah, so I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. John, how important is it for teamwork and compromise?
Oh,
when
my goodness.
you know, being involved with the Triple P?
Very, very important. I think that's just in life, in any partnership, whether that's marriage, whether that's you know, with your partner or with your team members at work. Communication is very important. I think if your needs aren't being met, like, I think it goes back to like the foundation of that pyramid, but like the philosophy of Triple P is taking care of yourself. And if your needs are not getting met, then you're not really going to be your best, and you're not going to be able to support your family. So I think the hardest thing of our job is sometimes not saying, because a lot of Triple P is coaching and getting them to get to where they want to be. So as a coach, the hardest thing is, Dad, you're spending way too much time on yourself rather than with the kids. Or Mom, you're spending way too much time with friends when you say you want your child's behavior to. It's having that emotional intelligence not to have that slip when you're coaching a family and helping them, coach them to get to their own solution, and being like, what do you think? So the reframing would be, what do you think about your poker club that always interferes with your date night? What do you think about that, Dad or Mom? And asking those tough questions will bring up friction. But again, with any change, no one likes change. It's doing it in a way where they feel they solve their own problem. So it's a tricky balance, because you know, sometimes I say the wrong things, and it just explodes and it gets worse. And I didn't necessarily help them move forward, but rather expose what is already at the surface. So it's really tough. So for me as a therapist, I'm compromising in my own thinking, like, what do I say so that I can help them feel empowered, versus what do I think about them to help them get to where they need to be. But absolutely, as parents, as partners, you have to communicate and compromise. And usually it's one parent that compromises more than the other.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is?
I think, again, that's a loaded question, but I can speak for our work in the rural areas. A lot of times it's a lot of the dads, and I'll just speak to my experience working with Key Creative. A lot of dads take on the role of thinking, my role in the family is to provide financially, provide the home, and my partner can help raise the kids, and I'm a part of that. However, I don't necessarily think I have all the time to spend with my time, because I'm working 24/7. So, and I'm not saying that's every family that we work with. A lot of the family, just being blunt, that's a lot of the families that we work with in Alberta. And to the other extent, I also want to say that there's a lot of modern families that we work with where it isn't particularly just one dad, one mom, but same-sex marriages, and you know, it's changing. And I think that's the cool thing about our world, is it's constantly changing, and we don't necessarily have all the solutions, but together through talking about compromise, we learn more about ourselves and what we need, and Triple P provides an opportunity to talk about it. Especially that level 5 enhanced. I think that's really a good tool. But that's a loaded question, like that's, and my intention is not to offend anyone with my comments. That's not my intention. It's been our experience that's sometimes how it is.
Well, and I think if it's not discussed, then it just kind of gets shoved down. And I was going to say, it sounds like to me what you're saying is some people's behavior, children's behavior, may be a result of, or at least connected to, what's going on with the adults.
Yes.
Is that correct? Do you agree with that, Jess?
I do agree. Again, that whole idea of modeling behavior, so what they're seeing on a daily basis, they're picking up on that. I more recently was working with a family, and I was meeting with Mom, but I knew Dad was upstairs for our whole first meeting, but I didn't find that out until the end. And so I said to the mom at the end of that meeting, I said, you know, if you'd like, you can invite Dad down to join us. I'd love to hear what he has to say. And she, I think, was waiting for that invitation, or just maybe all the other services she had received in the past were just specifically with her because maybe he wasn't capable of being around. So the next time I came, he was downstairs and sitting at the table with us. So I think maybe sometimes a parent is capable of sharing the information with their partner, whether they're there or not. But if you know that they're there and maybe they're not participating for whatever reason, to throw that invitation out there and see what happens. So.
Actually, I would like to add something to that, is that having that invitation, making sure both are heard and that they know they're both welcome. But what's so interesting to me about Triple P as well, the strategies aren't just for using on your children, right? It's really about the whole family's happiness. Positive descriptive praise will work on your husband. Positive descriptive praise will work on your wife. Thank you so much for taking out the garbage. I really appreciate that you did that, right? I really, calm, clear, and start, or asking for what you want. I'm really burnt out today. It was a rough day, tantrum, leaving preschool. Would you be able just for tonight to take over the bedtime routine and give me a break? I would really appreciate it. And then thanking them when they do, right? And when your partner knows that you appreciate their efforts, whether you're...
They're more apt to do it again.
They're more apt to do it again, and we all are. And giving attention, right? The fist bump, the thumbs up. When I have a parent, a family...
You know what, I do have to wrap you up.
I'm so
we
sorry.
are running
I'm so sorry.
late.
Yeah.
But, I absolutely really enjoyed this conversation. And you're absolutely correct. It can apply to every single human out there, but it's very, very helpful for parents of those with children with disabilities. So thank you very much for sharing your insight. We really appreciate your time and your energy today.
Thank you.
So as mentioned, we want to say a big thank you to our guests, Jess, JD, Tricia, and John, for generously sharing their experience and insight with us. And of course, to all of you who tuned into this session, we're very grateful that you've spent the hour with us, and we sure hope that you have found the conversation informative and helpful. As I mentioned in the introduction, today's webcast has been part of the Government of Alberta's Community and Social Services Learning Series, which will be running the third week of each month right through until June of 2018. The series covers topics from FSCD, like the one you saw today, but there are other series that talk about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, FASD, the Alberta Brain Injury Initiative, ABII, the Employment First Initiative, and the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee, OPGT. You can find recordings of previous webcasts and sign up for upcoming sessions at csslearningseries.ca. This year, we will be posting information about upcoming webcasts in advance to give you a chance to sign up and save the date so you don't miss any of our future content. Today's webcast was recorded and the video will be posted online along with videos from all the previous webcasts. The video link will be sent out to all registrants in the near future. And of course, we encourage you to share this video with anyone you think may be interested. If you have any feedback about today's webcast, we would love to hear from you. Please email us at amber.romanuk@gov.ab.ca. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and we would like to see you again in the future.